Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I am very excited that I get to speak to Sammi today, and we're talking about relationships. So instead of relationships ending, we're going to talk about maybe trying to save a relationship. And obviously, when I talk about it's with the exclusion of DV, if it's domestic violence, let's not take that into consideration. But if that's not involved and you're interested in saving your relationship, the advice that Sammi has hopefully will help you. So, Sammi, do you want to start off with just introducing who you are?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yes, Sammi Jaeger, and I co-host the Date Forever podcast with my husband, Nathan. We've had the show coming up almost 5 years now, 200 and something episodes. And I got curious about relationships, and in particular romantic relationships, around 2019 when I experienced some burnout. I was about to turn 30 and I quit my job, my big girl job, with no plan, and kind of went about redesigning my life from scratch. I realized that what I'd created was not what I wanted to continue living. And I started getting really curious about what makes a great life. And one of the things that I learned was about how the quality of our relationships dramatically impacts the quality of our life. There's an incredible study on human happiness and development done by Harvard. It's more than 70 years old and it still continues today. But that was one of the things I learned, is about the impact that our relationships can have on our happiness and our well-being and our physical health. So that was kind of one of the insights. And then teamed with that was around the same sort of time, Nathan and I had sort of recently celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, and we had seen a lot of our close friends go through separations and breakups, and in some instances divorce, which was really hard to see, especially for friends that we just were so surprised. We had no idea what had been going on, like, below the surface. And it kind of got Nathan and I chatting about, well, where do you actually go for relationship education before things are a bit shit? And we started looking for, like, well, if you've not been modeled a healthy, happy, thriving relationship at home, which we know that the divorce rates are, what, you probably know the exact number, but it's around half, right?
Yeah,
so most of us have seen a core relationship breakdown. So we just got curious about, well, if you weren't modeled it at home, where on earth do you actually go to learn those relationship skills? And we really couldn't find anything. There was a lot of things for, like, once you'd already hit turbulence, like, or maybe once you'd introduced children to the relationship and that kind of wasn't what you were expecting, or there'd been career issues or that kind of thing. But very little in the relationship education space to go from good to great. So we just got curious and thought, well, how are we going to do this and make it free? So we started a podcast and have had some incredible conversations with some incredible experts, but also just everyday couples talking about what they've found, the tools, tips and tricks that to keep a relationship fueled up.
That's so awesome. So when you're talking about stats, before I ran like my separation webinar Thursday, I think it was, and I was just trying to get some updated stats. So the life expectancy of a marriage in Australia is 8 years. Divorce rate is kind of like hanging around 30, but that doesn't take into de facto couples, because de facto couples don't divorce because they're not married. So that stat is probably double. And I did a podcast with Sharon a few months ago, who's like an amazing ADHD coach. And when you add additional needs into a relationship, that divorce skyrockets to like 80, 90%. So like the odds are like stacked against you, like massively, whether you have like, you know, kids or whether you have like kids with high needs. Like it's just, it blew my mind.
And that doesn't consider that those who stay married are actually happy either.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's assuming they're happy.
Yeah.
Like, it was just amazing. And I said to you before we went live, was I honestly would rather save a relationship than have to deal with you is the wrong word, but then have to help you through your separation, because sometimes it's just common threads as to why people separate. And obviously, like I said, DV is excluded. So anytime I say save a relationship, if you're in a DV relationship, just know that that's not what I'm referring to. I try to catch myself, but sometimes I don't. So DV, whole other story, keep yourself safe. That's your priority. But yeah, so there's usually threads, and sometimes like we've gone through like a whole family law process, And then in the end, the clients would be like, hey, just let you know, we got back together like 3 months ago, but we were too scared to tell you. It's like,
oh, I know, let's pop the champagne. Good on you. Yeah.
And like one of the first questions we ask is like, can we save this relationship? Like, is this something that we can do? So that's like our first go-to question. And you mentioned like the big motivator was, I mean, you guys have been married like for ages, like you do heaps of stuff together. So obviously what you guys are doing is like working for you. You know, there's a lot of people that you weren't expecting had separated. So I'd love to do an episode on just like, let's not get to the separation. Let's like maybe incorporate maybe little things that we can do in a relationship so we don't end up in that separation route. But yeah, I mean, you said there was nothing kind of out there for relationship advice. Do you have a perspective on how or why most people separate? Has that come across you since you've done the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the, like, I feel like there's two kind of trains of thought, right? It's like the big asteroid thing hits, like you mentioned, whether or not it's a diagnosis of some kind that has unforeseen circumstances, the infidelity thing, or money seems to be, you know, if someone is made redundant or fired or bad business decisions or any of those kind of like big asteroid things. Yeah. But I think the other side of that is the erosion of trust and these tiny little micro moments of eroding the foundation of a relationship. And I think a common story that we've heard or had therapists share with us too in terms of common amongst their clients is that the woman in a heterosexual relationship has been waving the flag for sometimes years, saying I've got unmet needs or this isn't working for me, and that really being unseen, unheard, potentially for a long time, and then that resulting in them being like, no more, that's it, I'm out, tapping out. And then in a heterosexual relationship, the male being like, what? This has blindsided me, didn't see this coming at all, totally unexpected, hasn't actually been hearing their partner for a long time. Yeah. So I think there's the big things and the little things.
Yeah. Addiction's another one. Yeah. So we kind of obviously see like, and without overtreading, it's like, okay, can a relationship be saved? Yes or no? Is there a cause as to why you're separated that we can deal with? Addiction's another one. So whether, you know, it's like drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, like there's a whole pile of things. So addiction's another big one that we see. With like, I think things have like stacked, like, so you said like it's, you know, possibly going unnoticed like for years, but it's not necessarily like one event either. Like there could just be piles of like little things like building up to the point it's like, you know, like done type thing, which isn't healthy. So the only reason the relationship's becoming unhealthy is because like there's no communication and stuff, would be assuming. Is there, what tips? So when you had all your friends separating, you and Nathan were obviously like, hey, we don't want to end up there. What did you implement from there on to make sure that you guys didn't go in that situation?
Yeah, so I want to preface this that this is just what works for us. And this is what we've learned from a lot of conversations from our own personal development and growth and learning. So I'm sharing this from the lens of like my lived experience of my marriage. And I know that doesn't represent everybody's marriage. So we kind of have 6 big things that we do. So starting at an annual level, around the end of November, we take a weekend, 2 days, to do our annual game plan. So we normally go away or book a room or whatever to very intentionally step out of our day-to-day life, take a look at the year that was, what worked for us, what didn't, what hurdles did we come up across, did we hit the goals and do the things that we had set out to, and then make a plan for the upcoming 12 months. What are our priorities? What are the things that need to be front and center? What are we saying yes to? What are we saying no to? What are we expecting from this year to sort of be about? So that's kind of the annual level. And then once a quarter, so at the change of the season, we get back together and look at the last 90 days or so, and have we done what we committed to doing, whether or not it's for ourselves, our own individual goals or our shared goals. And then we set our intentions for the next 90 days, which is really great too, because both of us do a little bit of travel for work. We don't live in the same state as our family, so it's very normal for one of us to be traveling in that sort of window of time. So we get to kind of look up on the horizon and check that things are what's coming up. And then once a month, we have like a little same page get together where we check our 8 fuel tanks. So the 8 different things that kind of contribute to our own lives and then our shared life staying filled up. So relationship with self, our own romantic relationship, our relationship and network, humming household, career and business, wealth and lifestyle, the world and the future. So once a month, we check in on those 8 things and have a conversation about if one of us is ranking that high and the other one's ranking it low, like what's going on there? Why is there disparity in that? And then we get to get the opportunity to kind of like let air out of the balloon before it pops, right? Because we're having those conversations so regularly, and it helps us like be far more proactive about problem solving. So like humming household, like the domestic like project management of running a household is huge, and we don't have kids, so I can only imagine how many additional things people need to hold in their brains and on their to-do lists to make their humming household run. So that's kind of at that monthly level, we check in on those things. And then once a week we have happy hour chat. So we normally do it on a Sunday night, and that came from one of our podcast guests. They were doing it in their relationship. It had been prescribed to them by their therapist. And that was a game changer for us, like having that weekly check-in chat. So we do talk about sex, talk about money, talk about the calendar, what's going on. We do some active appreciation, like if there's something that we're both giving, like, hey, I really want to thank you for XYZ, or asking for, hey, I felt like you didn't appreciate when I went out of my way to ABC, whatever the thing might be. But also to apologize, like, hey, is there anything you'd like me to apologize for this week? And sometimes they catch me off guard where, yeah, Nate's been harboring something that, I didn't realize that got under your skin. And it might be a one-off thing, or it could be a pattern of behavior, any of that kind of stuff. So we kind of talk about that at a weekly level. And then we have a daily gratitude practice as well. So that we do that at night. We've had that for a really long time. I read The Happiness Advantage, which really hit me and helped me understand how much a daily active gratitude practice can shape the way that we see the world. And it is also kind of like a nice temperature check, because sometimes gratitude doesn't come so easily and you're feeling really frustrated or overwhelmed or all those things, but other times it comes really easy. So that's a nice little temperature check. So sorry, that's 5 of the 6. And the 6th one I want to sort of talk about that we do is our date nights. So this is something that I think couples need to find the right rhythm and pulse and heartbeat for them. Like I said, we're child-free by choice. So we probably have a little bit more double income, no kids than people who have made a different lifestyle choice. But we, and flexibility, all of that stuff. So for us, we take 2 very intentional dates in a month. Nath organizes the one in the first half of the month, and I organize one in the second half of the month. So we just draw a line right down the middle, and we've got some kind of guidelines around that, like it needs to go in the calendar, it needs to be in advance, and the person who's, it's their half of the month, they need to organize it, so no mental load on the other person. So those are kind of the big 6 that we do in our relationship to keep it fueled up.
That is a shit ton. That is like running it.
Yeah.
I can't put this in my Monday board to plan.
Yeah. But like you say that though, but it's like 2 days a year, a couple of like probably an hour a week for our happy hour chat, a couple of minutes a day for a gratitude practice, and then like maybe 2 or 3 hours at the change of the season. And it's like, it's chill. We go to a coffee shop or do it over lunch or like, so I don't know. We invest in our relationship for sure, but I think the reward for that for me is that my marriage is like the most certain thing in my life. It's like one of the easiest parts of my life. And it also allows me to weather so much more uncertainty in every other aspect of my life, because I know that we're rock solid. Like we're a team. There's, the space between us is clean. We take really good care of ourselves and each other, which means that, you know, if I have a shitty week, month, quarter, year in business, it's way easier to weather when our romantic relationship's in a good place.
Yeah. So I'll come back to like, was it like 6-7 things that you do? To go back to the start of that, when you and Nate decided, all right, our friends are separating, we're blindsided by that, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Were you on the same page with that, or did someone instigate that conversation first? Like, so way back, and obviously you were together for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. So
how did that come about?
Yeah, we got married in 2012 and we were babies. Like, I think I was 23, 24. And yeah, like 5 years later, like we're late 20s and watching friends go through this stuff. Like, I would say the level of intention in the first like 5 years of our marriage was like hardly any. It was like, we're just seam of the pants, like, you know, but that's probably also reflective of the age that we were when we got married too. But watching our friends go through separations and breakups and dividing assets and stuff and friends, like friends choosing sides, and some were no fault and some were definitely, you know, someone went about exploding that marriage or that relationship as opposed to like carefully deconstructing it with care and respect. So
I like
Nathan,
that. Deconstructing it with care and respect. I like that.
Yeah, one of my best friends did this maybe like 4 years ago, and I just think like if she was the blueprint for how to like back out of a relationship, I learned so much from her. And they, you know, they had a child together and they are phenomenal co-parents. They're on the same team, but they did it with so much care and respect and honesty, and no one blew anything up. Yeah, which is, you know, we have this skill set, right, that we have, and we can invest in developing those things and having the hard conversations, and they are hard. Relationship conversations can be really freaking hard. And I think that's why, like, just go to therapy, go get someone to facilitate a third party conversation if you're having a hard time communicating how you feel, what you want, what you need. Like, invest in the support, because if you could figure it out on your own, you would have already
done it. And as you said before, like, it's how you grow up as well. So you kind of see like how hard it was growing up, and then that's kind of like embed in your head. It's like, right, that's a relationship, and you know that can come from a DV. Okay, like dad bashes mum. Okay, that's just how it is. So like even that's kind of the cycle how that happens as well. And clearly, I'm not saying that's right. And then some of those conversations, just having that conversation can be really in that. Hey, so go back to the start, like where you and Nate had come together saying we have to do something. The courage of one person to have that conversation is like also really, really hard as well to acknowledge, because it's probably something that you haven't experienced growing up. It's probably like your friend group or who you surround yourself with, like they're probably not having those conversations as well. Like
that was a really big part. Hey, like for one couple in particular, we were quite blindsided, like really just like we're so shocked, and that really rocked me in my relationship with my friend, because I was like, how could you have been going through all of this and not said anything, and how was I not a safe person to open up to? And it really made me look at myself and the way that I was showing up, and the willingness of my vulnerability to share the shitty stuff, or whether or not I had been presenting that, you know, mine and Nate's marriage was happy roses, unicorn, sunshine all day, every day, year in, year out. And I was like, well, actually, I don't think that I do share very openly or honestly when we're going through hard shit. So that was a really conscious decision for me to start leaning in and sharing some of the messy middle more with. Not everybody deserves that level of intimacy. I don't want everybody in the backstage of my life. There's some people who should stay in the nosebleed section. But that was really confronting for me, and it's made me a better person, like having sat next to my friend and had her share all of this stuff that had happened and that she'd been experiencing for quite some time.
So do you think that not only the change like between you and Nate, but having experienced so many friends go through a separation, do you think that has changed the way you approach your friendship. Like it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so there's obviously all this
Yeah.
stuff happening. For us to still be friends, we need to like have a monthly girls date or something so we can like all spill stuff out. Is that kind of something maybe coming from that?
So I'm really lucky. I've got a couple of different groups of girlfriends, and each kind of group has their own, like, I guess, culture of how we communicate. But one group in particular, we've been friends since high school, like 20 years or more. And we have for years, I reckon more than 5 years now, sent very regular kind of little summary vlogs of life, like little life updates. And it's very common for one of us to be crying and spilling our deepest, darkest secrets. Probably be terrifying if the group chat ever got leaked. But yeah, we've really fostered that in that particular group of girlfriends. Others, it's more one-on-one kind of conversations and those check-in kind of things. But yeah, it's one of the greatest things that I learned, and I'm so grateful to have learned it in my 20s, that yeah, if I want vulnerability and openness and honesty in my relationship, I need to be willing to go first sometimes and show some leadership and create that safety in those relationships too.
And how, for somebody that's not used to doing that, or like they're in positions, you know, I'm about to ask, how do you build yourself up to have the courage to do that and not be afraid for that other person to say you're a fucking idiot, don't be stupid, or that's not what relationships are? Like, how do you bring yourself to the initiator?
I think a lot of this comes back to that relationship with self piece, and a lot of that quality of relationship with self starts with the self-awareness. And I think a lot of us don't actually have a good hygiene or good practice around checking in with ourselves to see, like, how do I actually feel? How do I, you know, what went well in that situation? What was a bit of a curveball? What didn't go so well? What would I like to do differently? So I think it's really about fostering that honesty with yourself, because there's literally no way you're going to be able to communicate your feelings just to another human being, or how you experience something, if you actually don't know. So I think one of my like early pieces of this, like personal development, developing the skill set to even identify what it was that I was feeling, was quite literally downloading the feelings wheel and being like, okay, cool, we've got happy, sad, disgust, like, and then going, okay, what's the tier outside of that? Okay, so am I actually angry or am I embarrassed? Like, and getting that literacy of feelings. Like, there's thousands of them, and yet we probably default to, yeah, I'm good, nah, it's a bit shit. Like, no, we've got a whole range of vocab that we can use. But yeah, I think it starts with being able to hear yourself, notice when you're feeling something and you don't know what it is, observing, like, where am I feeling this? Is it in my face? Is it in my chest? Is it in my hands? Is it in my back? Like, where is it that I'm actually experiencing some kind of feeling? And do I know what it is? And do I know what triggered it? And if not, how can I sit with that and question it? Lots of different modalities to do that stuff, right? Whether or not it's like just reflection, sitting quietly with your own thoughts, whether or not it's a guided meditation or journaling, or whether or not you need to work with a coach to ask you those questions. Maybe you need to voice memo back to yourself so that you can verbally process, which is totally cool. You don't have to send it to anyone. But yeah, that vulnerability piece, like, I'm not going to pretend that that's easy at all.
Yeah, and it becomes easier with practice.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to like the half hour mark already. So there's a couple of just more things I want to finish off with. So towards the start, you said that you had read a book. What were there other? So I forgot what the book was. So if you like re-mention that and who the author was, but was there anything at the start that you and Nathan used that definitely helped you pave the way to how you are now, or was it like, you know, Googling, like a ChatGPT? Wasn't around back then, but were there sources back then that you can recommend to people who, you know, there's probably just one person in a relationship that's thinking, okay, maybe this is what we need to do. Like, is there something that you can suggest to somebody that you guys used early on in the piece to start like thinking about how to approach this with a partner?
Yeah. So our relationship journey, where we kind of moved from like a reactive state to a far more proactive state, that our annual game plan thing was the thing that actually came first. that became the pillar. And that happened again because we'd been living so reactively that we'd had maybe 2 years of back-to-back visitors from interstate staying with us. We had a lot of weddings, a lot of hens parties, bucks parties, those kind of things that we didn't want to miss out on. And then when we got to the end of the year, we were both exhausted and we both weren't that happy with how we had spent our time, money and energy. We had flown, 8 or 9 times interstate, and which then made us quite challenging to foster new relationships in the state that we had moved to. So we knew that something sort of needed to change there. So one of the first resources that we used was some, I think we just Googled, honestly, how to do an annual review. We've got a pretty dialed in process now, which we share for free. You can grab it on my website, sammijaeger.com/AGP, so annual game plan.
Links below as well, so people can find it.
Yeah, that's where we started. But then, like you said, that sounds like a lot of the things that we were doing. They didn't all come at once. Those 2 days came first. And then I read The Happiness Advantage, which talks about the idea that happiness precedes success. It's not the other way around. Success won't make you happy, but happiness will create success. Sean Aker, and if you're not a big reader, he's got a fantastic TED talk which crams that idea into 12 minutes. But yeah, that was a really, and then we layered on top of that. I started my career in project management, specializing in events. So one of the things that was going on in mine and Nate's relationship was that I was the default organizer for our social calendar, for our romantic, our dates. It was always me finding the event, buying the tickets, putting it in the calendar, organizing whatever needed to be organized. So there was things there that our approach of the 2x2x2 date night, we found that on a Reddit thread of hey, someone's figured out that maybe we should go on a date twice a month, take a holiday every 2 years. Yeah. So we pulled resources from all sorts of different places. But I think the first part is to just get curious and probably not try and fix everything at once. It's probably a little bit backwards in going forwards, but I think, it's starting with that relationship with self, but then something like getting some systems and processes set up in your humming household can then free up time to be okay, cool. Well, rather than 2 hours on a Saturday to do grocery shopping, we now can go for a walk and talk on the beach together. How great, because we sat down for 20 minutes one night and ordered our groceries online. There's things that you can do to choose how you spend that time, money, and energy.
Yeah. So I know I said it was a lot. You said it wasn't. That is a lot, especially for someone that has kids.
Yeah.
But I suppose to wrap up, and you've kind of already had said it. So if there was somebody there who is concerned that their marriage or their relationship is going to end because life gets in the way, and now there's kids and all of that stuff, what would be the one thing that you would suggest? I kind of feel like you're going the 90-day route, but I think for somebody that's for a relationship anything like that, I feel even that is going to be that is really that's a shit ton.
Yeah.
Maybe start, hey, if the kids are in bed or at a sleepover or whatever, whether that's Sunday night when the kids are asleep, whatever. Hey, I think we need to touch base with each other once a week, and because you do assume the role. You just said you were the organizer, and that's in a relationship, and it's really hard to get that. So I suppose what's the first thing that for somebody looking at maybe implementing this, what would be from your experience, obviously. Everything's not going to suit everybody. What's your one tip?
Yeah, I would say start with that weekly conversation, that weekly, we call it a happy hour check-in. And you can get a copy of that agenda on my website as well. So sammijaeger.com/happy hour. And that will guide you through those conversations. And like you said, some of those things might be really loaded, talking about sex or talking about money or talking about organization. Those can be really loaded. So maybe ease up in whichever one you talking about what's going on for the week. Hopefully you have enough dialogue to be able to speak and hear your partner in that, and figure out where you might be able to better support each other. But I think, yeah, even just starting that cadence of carving out, and you don't have to start with a whole hour, start with 20 minutes. And like, if you don't have 20 minutes for one of the most important people in your life, you got some questions to ask. Choose your hard.
Yeah. And like, don't make it so, you know, you can be sitting on the lounge and you can be like really informal. Hey, right. So just, I know something I've always done with my kids since they were babies, and I can't tell you why. Someone's obviously told me, or I've read it or something. And to this day, so they're 11 and 13 and they still expect me to do this daily. So they're like, right, all right, kids. So today we've got this, this, and this, and this, and this. And tomorrow we've got this, this, this. And heads up, later in the week we have this. Like, I still do that with my kids. I've done that like for the whole entire lives. Can't tell you why. They expect it now, but they love it because it kind of mentally prepares us. Cool. So we've got
it's that reset.
We've got a busy week this week and whatever. So I know that is really helpful, like something just small like that. So even just starting something small like that. Hey kids, or hey family. So we've got this and this and this on. It's a bit of a hectic week. You know, we can all work together to do whatever and just build upon that. Like, it's not going to happen overnight, especially if that's something that you're not used to doing whatsoever. But I know for me, just having that, hey kids, so tomorrow's going to be this, today's going to be this, tomorrow is that, this week is this. You know, like the girls have their swimming carnival on Monday. Hey, so next week's going to be hectic. We've got your swimming carnival, we've got touch, we've got this. Just heads up, like that's coming. Just mentally preparing for that, I think, makes a really big difference as well.
Yeah. And those conversations can get you back on the same team.
Yeah, 100%.
It, like, if you, rather than versing each other, it's like the two of us against the problem or the opportunity.
I'm busier than you. No, I'm busier than you. Like, it's not a competition.
Let's work together. And sometimes those can be easier places to start, for sure, rather
100%.
than
don't overwhelm. Just start small and build up, because that's further along than what you were, you know, yesterday.
Yeah, maybe going back even before that, like, is making the choice. Like, are you recommitting to doing the work that's going to be required to get your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your person where you want it? Like, because if you're not willing to do the work and you actually think it's already ship sailed, like, maybe that's the kinder thing to communicate. But I think, starting with like asking yourself, am I committed to this?
Yeah, that's a really good spot to start. And even that question can be really hard to think.
Yeah, because you might not be. And that's I think that comes back to that self-awareness piece. Like, if you're not taking those regular moments to check in with yourself and like, how am I feeling? How do I feel about my life right now? What's going on in my relationships? Yeah, it's hard to get anywhere if you don't know where you are.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's been amazing. Thank you so much. It's good to get on this side of the relationship and not the end where we usually see. But we'll make sure that we got Sammi's link below so you can go check out her free resources and a link to her podcast and Nate's podcast as well. But thank you so much, Sammi, for jumping on today. I can see us doing more in the future because we had a few things that we're going to talk about today.
We could have gone on all sorts of rabbit holes.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you very much for your time, and congratulations on having such a great and healthy relationship. I'm sure that's, deep down, if that's what you really want, then you're going to do the work to make sure you have that relationship, no matter, how you were brought up or anything. So it's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammi.